The very first thing I want to ask is how does it feel to finally see the film be done? Because this was filmed, what, last August? We did that, and it's actually a quick turnaround time for a short film. So how are we feeling now that it's like into the world and birthed?
I guess I'll start since I have the microphone. How it feels. Right now, I think it feels needed, considering where we are politically, our political climate. I think we are experiencing a wave of revisionist history and an assault on not only communities of color, but also access to public health, which I feel like all have been highlighted in this film. I think we owe it to ourselves, being the progeny of chattel slavery, to continue telling the story as creatively as we can, considering the standards of education and the standards of history are being changed in front of us. And so we are the embodiment of history preserved, of culture preserved, and I feel like this film is just what we needed in this current time. It's oh so timely. That's personally how I feel.
Personal feelings.
Well, I just wanted to let everybody know that I feel great, number one. Number two, this is a much needed film. And it is done. Now it will be history. It will be in the archives. So I am so excited to be sitting here with these young, gifted people.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Vanity and Elder Carly said. This moment right now is one of the things that they do really well, that systems of oppression do really well, is they try to colonize your mind also, and your imagination and your ability to be creative and find creative ways to tell stories that have happened and stories that are unfortunately expected to happen, and to write ourselves into the future too. So to see young Black folk from the Low Country, from Charleston, with the history that we have and the legacy that we have, using our creative talents to tell these kinds of stories in the face of oppression is a very powerful thing. We can't lose the power of our creativity and our artistry. So I feel it feels really moving, incredibly moving.
I think people have been asking me how I've been feeling the last few weeks, and I don't think I have an emotion for it. It feels very timely. It feels very ordained. I'm sure we might get into like how we all connected, but it all feels very connected. And it just feels like I'm in my purpose. I think that's the best way to explain it. Yeah.
I agree with everything everyone just said. It feels I'm very proud of Taekwon because for y'all that don't know, we met in Jacksonville.
I thought I was going to say it first.
Oh, sorry. But as teachers, public school teachers, at William M. Raines High School.
Can I say something?
Yes.
If you know Jacksonville, William M. Raines is like, it's just a lot.
Duval.
Yeah. So we met in Duval County where I was raised, and just to know he came to me maybe a few years ago and said, I'm writing something and I'll hit you up when I'm done. I was like, all right. And he did that. He wrote it. He brought us the first iteration of it, and he kept writing and he kept writing and he kept writing. People don't know how much goes into doing a film, like from start to finish, especially if you're a writer and a director, and a first-time filmmaker. So I just feel really, really proud of Taekwon and for him to, just fighting for his film, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Well, with that, I want to stay right there with a question for Taekwon because, again, can you raise your hand if you're cast and crew? So when you initially started, thank you, the claps. Well, when you initially started your project, you talked to maybe like 2 or 3 people. And by the time we actually got to filming, we had like a crew of 25 to 30.
Yeah.
So like, I'm wondering, like, what was that process like, building your team and trusting people to help you bring your vision to fruition?
Yeah. So, like Josh mentions, we go back to the halls of William M. Raines High School. I hit him up a few years ago because I knew that he would be the person to execute the visual aspect of the film. We had a friendship at the time, and still do, of course, and I think it's gotten deeper since then. But I just trusted him. I think everybody that was brought on was off the rip of trusting, just knowing Josh, getting to know Shaquille and Blue through Trident Technical College, which has a really phenomenal film school. And it was just trusting people. It was, I think, one of the phrases that I think I was able to put a word to or a phrase to was just this idea of like community filmmaking. I think there's a lack of these stories in Charleston, and I think, again, just having that community that I can rely on and just knowing that they just trusted me with the vision. I think there's been so many times over the last year where there's been a lot of doubts and stress, and just if you know what I've been going through the last few years, you just know. But I just had a team that I could just trust. And I think on set, and I think anybody can probably back me up on this, but it was really moving like water. You know, like we probably had like one thing with a fire detector that went off and we didn't know the code, and it was going off for like 2 minutes, and my Nana's dog Prince was barking and going crazy. But there was a lot going on, but we were able to breathe and just trust each other. And yeah, I think this has been a very ancestrally and God divine project. So I think I really had to lean in on faith just to trust it every step of the way. Because as soon as I got that hard drive, a couple months after I started editing, I probably wouldn't have minded throwing it into the river, honestly. Because I was just like, it's not going to work. But it worked. So,
It did.
yeah.
It definitely did. Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about community filmmaking, and this film itself is so deeply rooted in like familial connections. And like you said, like the set felt like water. Again, you guys can attest to it or not. Like the set felt like family after a couple of days. Like we would have our moments, but we all felt kin. And I really want to ask the cast, what was it like forming those familial bonds, getting into the space where you felt like kin? Because we didn't have a lot of time, but you guys snapped into it so easily.
Well, one of the things is that I had met Vanity and Taekwon maybe 10 years ago. I write plays, so I was writing a play in Gullah and Geechee in English. And I met up with Vanity, and she was telling me what she was going to do and how she wanted to do her story. And Taekwon was with her. I don't know if Taekwon brought her or she brought Taekwon, but I know I met them together. So I was very happy to meet them because at that time, a lot of people did not want to be identified as Gullah Geechee. But they were willing and brave enough. And they came and said, we'll do it. So we had a wonderful time, and you still can get see Vanity's play on, I think it's the internet. But that's how I met Taekwon. And he came to me before he did the movie. And he spoke to me. And he asked me would I be in it. I was so honored because I realized this man knows, he understands that we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. And so to honor my ancestors, and first of all, we always honor God first. So to honor my ancestors, this has been a joy to be here with you all in this time, in this space, at this age.
I think I want to echo Elder Carly in the fact that there are not that many degrees of separation between many of us that were involved on the project. I can say everyone sitting up here right now, I've had a previous relationship with aside from this film. I was an undergrad serving as a intern at the Avery Research Center when Josh was there. Taekwon and I have known each other since we were about 10 years old, 10 or 11 years old. So we've quite literally seen each other grow up through this world. Benny, I've known for quite some time. Benny and I actually were on CNN several years ago together, speaking truth to power, and I had the experience in being included on his Water album recording. And Elder Carly was gracious enough to allow me to create a Gullah Geechee play about my coming of age story. And so each of these people I've had a pre-existing relationship with outside of this project, I think, which enhanced the ease and subside a little bit of the anxiousness away from this project. We got real comfortable with each other. I think I remember Ashley taking a nap inside set before we recorded. And so, we recorded, I think, last July or last August. It was hot. It was hot. It took a lot of patience. It took a lot of grace with each other. It took having snacks and food on standby because I was definitely hungry.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that there aren't that many degrees of separation between several of us, it made the familiarity that much stronger, and the bond in creating the project that much more seamless.
No, I love that. I love that. And again, this film is so rooted in these connections. And I do wonder, like, did shooting this film, especially because I believe most of the cast and crew is either from Charleston, from the Low Country, has some sort of roots here. So I'm wondering, did it change anything about how you felt about being from here and like experiencing here, living here, if it shifted anything from you?
I can go. You want to go? You got some? Oh, you got some pepper again.
Yeah. So I was raised in Jacksonville, which is in the Gullah Geechee corridor. It's in the Low Country, the most southern city in it. Well, St. Augustine. But a lot of people in Jacksonville don't identify as Gullah Geechee, not because they reject the identity, because it's just not as known as an identity. So me being from Jacksonville, but my family, my roots are from Charleston, James Island, Solid Green, Mosquito Beach, back to Green. I was just on there as a documentary. Yeah, my family, all West Side, all that. But yeah, so to come here, because I consider myself like first generation, not being raised in the Low Country. So I'm not being raised in Charleston, I'm sorry. So to me, I have a more complex relationship to Charleston because I didn't grow up here. So I have a certain way that I see Charleston, a certain relationship I developed with Charleston coming here to live in 2018 for grad school. I used to visit as a child, of course, because my whole family's here, but coming to live here and also feeling like I don't want to speak for people, although this is my story too, because my family's been here for over 7 generations. But there are certain nuances that you experience growing up here that's very different than growing up in Jacksonville, and there's a lot of similarities. So I really wanted to be, patient when it came to really putting myself out there, creating art that I felt was true and genuine and honored people and respected culture. So I wasn't quick to put anything out. So when Taquan asked me to be a part of it and to shoot it, I said yes, of course, but I was nervous in that sense because I wanted to do it justice. So and this was my first film that I would consider my, a first, I don't want to say real production, but a short narrative film. This is the first time that I shot one. So he was first time director. I was first time director of photography, and we were really just figuring stuff out as we went. Our motto was like, it's not a Hollywood set. We are not professionals. Literally. We working on it. Like we are now, but through the crucible of making a film in August, we really learned a lot of things, and we leaned into the concept of community filmmaking. We had a lot of different maybe thoughts and ideas about how a film is going to be made or how it is made, but ultimately we had a process and we stuck to it. And yeah, I think we did what we set out to do.
Yeah.
If I can recall, you said the question was, how's the relationship changed, or
Yeah, like how's your relationship changed to Charleston or
Yeah.
to the Low Country in general since then?
Yeah, so I guess a quick context background for me. I have been living away from Charleston. It's been a year since I've been back, but prior to that, I've been away for about 7 years. I went down to Jacksonville where Josh and I met to teach for America, if anybody has heard of it. Ooh, I feel like I know who that was that made that sound, so that's cool. Yeah, I feel that. And then I moved to Nashville for 4 years to do grad school. When I was in Jacksonville, I don't feel like I felt the differences and the nuances as Josh was describing. I think a lot of the kids thought I was like Jamaican or Caribbean or from like Haiti, because Jacksonville is such like an international city in so many ways. And it's in the corridor. But I think for me, I really started to understand or witness and immerse myself in like this diaspora of African Americans outside of this coastal region, right? So being in Nashville was like my first time being inland, right? So I'll just kind of give that context really quick. Going back to the question as far as like how things have changed, again, I've been back for a year. I feel like I see a new crane in the sky every other week. I feel like I see a new building that's just emerged magically every other month. I work in a space right now where there's a lot of advocacy going on around the environment, but I'm also realizing how, I'm trying to find the best word, maybe the most shady word, but the best word. I'm realizing how gatekept land is here in South Carolina. Like there's a lot of plantation owners that still own the land here in South Carolina that are dictating and pouring money into policies that are taking land away from Black folk, Gullah Geechee folk. I think I'm also realizing how that change in land and the gatekeeping of that land is impacting like the connectedness that I feel with culture, with family / community, and friends, right? Like for example, all my family grew up in most of my family, my mom's side is West Ashley, daddy's side is in Mount Pleasant. I can't afford to live in Mount Pleasant right now, Remley's Point specifically. A lot of the elders are passing away. A lot of people can't, because the heirs property aren't able to hold on to the land. It's just a really different dynamic and different demographic. And I think going back to kinship and family, I'm so used to just popping up in my family's house that live like a street down, literally a street down, like the epiphany of like up the road. But now it takes me like 45 minutes. I got to drive in like Somerville and Ladson and Goose Street traffic. So I don't even see my family as much, even though I've been back home for a year. And that does something to my spirit, and it does something to my heart, not being able to get those laughs and get those crab boils and get those shenanigans and ranking on each other. Like it does something. And I think for me, this past year has allowed me to investigate that and to grieve that in so many ways. Yeah. Cool.
You can answer if you want to. You don't have to, but you know.
They fighting over the mic.
Yeah, I do think what I do feel like is I don't know if it changed my relationship with Charleston or the Low Country. But looking at it as like South Carolina as a whole, and the way the state concentrates power, it's the first state to secede from the Union for a reason, and it's also the state that leads the nation in book bans.
Oh man.
So when you think about all these things in its relationship to power and our creative power, when I talk about our creative power, which is what we experienced on set, I'm not just talking about creative power in making art. That's where our mind usually go to. But creative power in the way that we build relationships with each other, intergenerationally, laterally in our generations. I love the term community filmmaking. And it makes me just think, if we don't tell these stories, what we already know is if you're watching Hollywood and these big studios, they telling the same story over and over again until they can find a way to tell your story for you and sell it to you and move you out of the process and erase you out of the narrative completely. So just to see community filmmaking happen in a place that's still fighting, not just to stay above the water, but fighting to exist for Black people to be able to actualize their purpose and live free and live well, is a commentary on how far the state even still has to go, you know, in relationship to what we see in all across the country, across the world. But creative power is a big step in us actually organizing our own power as a people. That's a component of it. So it makes me feel that way.
Well, of course, I feel that this is a step in the right direction. And I believe that this is the start that we are looking for. They said if there's something that you see and you don't like it, you have to change it. So we have added to what needs to be done. It is already done. It's already done. So that's what makes me feel good, because now I say to myself, finally somebody get it. And you all get it. And also, you know, I work a lot with environmental groups. And so all of this is part of who we are. That's why we're here. So I feel good that there are more of us doing this kind of stuff. And I'm just asking for more of us to continue to do it.
What you got, B?
I think Gullah Geechee has had, it's felt like a double-edged sword to me for much of my life, because there was a stigma that was attached to it that I don't think we like to be as honest about, especially those of us that have navigated the ivory tower that are going through academia right now. I myself am in grad school at UNC Chapel Hill. So, thank you. But growing up, there was a stigma attached to steeping the way I spoke in my Geechee, in my Gullah. There was a stigmatization that was associated with allowing myself to speak in my native and relaxed dialect, right? My mother was, I think, forced to code switch for much of her professional life, and so she associated speaking properly as a rites of passage to opportunity, right? And so when we were caught speaking Geechee, I was caught going outside saying, "Boy, hot out ya," right? That was something that was shunned, right? Whereas I had a deeper side of my lineage from a small town or small neighborhood called Red Top, neighboring Hollywood and Johns Island, where that was very much celebrated. Being Gullah, being Geechee was very much. Great-grandfather is Sam White. If you're from out there, you knew Sam White. He passed away a few years ago, but that was my great-grandfather. And speaking Geechee, reclaiming that heritage, owning that dialect, being the embodiment of that culture was very much celebrated on one end, but was heavily stigmatized on the other end. And I knew that there was a deeper meaning as to why it was stigmatized. I knew that there were people that were prevented from opportunity, from being their authentic self, from speaking how they were taught to speak, from speaking like the people that they grew up around, from steeping themselves in their culture. And so I'm now in the Raleigh-Durham area where there are droves of people that are reclaiming their Geechee ancestry in that part of North Carolina. And it is something I think fascinating to experience, having moved away during COVID and coming back, I'd say maybe once or twice a year ever since 2020. I'm experiencing, I think, an imposter syndrome, sometimes coming back home, like I don't belong here, like I don't recognize here. It is an aggressively changing Charleston. It is aggressively being gentrified. I think it is a microcosm of what is happening in several cities throughout the United States. But this film, I think, is something that has called me back home and made me feel a fire inside to support myself, to support all of my other people, and telling what our story is, because I think we're at the end of needing to code switch. I think we're done with that.
Yeah,
I think
so.
we have been taught that respectability.
Yeah.
We've been taught as Black people that respectability, exceeding and performing above, was how we were going to get what was the basic necessity. And I think I'm over that.
Yeah.
I think we're all over that.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. That's how the film is making me feel.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Wonderful.
Amen to that. So I have one last question before we open it up to the audience, and you kind of touched on it slightly with reclaiming of things, and it's kind of a two-parter. So, but with reclaiming, and often the thing that we said on set was that this film was for the archive. It's very important for us to have that grounding, that the things that we are creating are going into an archive, not only of current Gullah Geechee culture, but the futurism in Gullah Geechee culture, the past and the present, which we know is combined in Afrofuturism itself. So with that, I ask you, how do you define, well, not necessarily define, how do you see Gullah Geechee film progressing? And what would that be? But also with Charleston in itself, 25 years, what does it look like?
Everybody? Or?
Everybody.
How do I see Gullah Geechee film with Charleston in the next 25 years?
Yeah, we can combo like that.
Okay. Well, if things continue at the rate and pace and pattern that they are going, there'll be very little Charleston to film about. And so I think this is a call to action and reckoning and grappling with environmental degradation, which this city has a nasty and racist history in how they've handled the land. They have a history of illegally filling marshlands and building on top of it. They continue to stack on top of things without regard of irrigation or where the water will return.
Yeah.
It continues to displace our most at-risk communities. And if they want waterfront property, they're going to have, it's going to be waterfront. It's going to be nothing but waterfront property. And so I think that filmmaking, when it comes to Gullah Geechee, is going to continue to show the portal that this city is. We are some of the closest connected culture to our African roots as you're going to get in the United States. And I think that film is going to continue to display just that.
And I agree with you, Vanity. Years ago, you very seldom saw a lot of movies about people of color. And now we're seeing a little bit more. And I foresee that this will continue with the Gullah Geechee, because we are a unique culture along the coast that has to be protected. And how are we going to take care of our communities? How are we going to help this mitigate this water situation? We must have funding. So I believe that this is a way for us to actually get the money to do the things that we need to do that we're talking about right now. Because if you want something different, you got to do something different. Yeah. And we are. Thank you.
25 years.
So 25 years, we'll put this at 2050.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, some people will say that art is supposed to make you feel something. You know, that's the definition when you ask them what art's supposed to do. Is art is, you know, you hear white people in the, like, well, I felt it. And then they go home and they do the same thing.
Yeah.
But this, I'm just telling you the truth. That's BS. The purpose of art is just not to make you feel something. It's hot outside. I can go outside and feel something. But that's humidity. That's not going to do it. Art is supposed to transform you. It's supposed to open up, split you open. And my mom used to play Sam Cooke when we were little. Okay. And he started in gospel, and the gospel group was called the Soul Stirrers. It's supposed to stir your soul in such a way
that it leads you to be like you've never been before. You have to be transformed. It has to transform you. And once it does transform you, you can figure out, okay, there's a question of power in the city, because like Vanity said, like Elder Carter said, in 25 years, it's going to be a lot. You're going to have a ton of waterfront property, more than you need. If we don't begin to allow art like this, to encourage more art, to encourage more stories from folks who are from here, have been from here, legacy is tied up in the land and in the water, allow that to split us open in a way that transforms us so that we can begin organizing for power. Because like Malcolm said, power never takes a step back, only in the face of more power, and we up against a people who are powerful, a machine that is powerful, and it don't care about you. It don't care about the land, it cares about money. So the only way we can make power step back is to organize for more power, support the people who've been doing that work. And it's a good thing for us to be hungry for more power. Everybody. Don't let anybody tell you, oh no, I don't want more power. You do. You need it, because the minute you cede it, someone's taking it away from you. Even creative people like us, artistic people like us, creative people like you all, power is the key. That's the only way we're going to save this place. So that's what I think.
So Charleston in 25 years. So one of the reasons why I said it in 2040 is because I think back in like 2018, there's a lot of environmental advocacy groups, government-funded groups that said by like 2050, between 2060, Charleston Peninsula would be underwater. So for me, the number 25 just stands out, right? Like, what are we going to do in between the time of like 25 years to see us in 2050? So I just want to say that. Secondly, going back to the question, as far as what I think about like Gullah Geechee cinema, Gullah Geechee filmmaking, Gullah Geechee art as a whole, I do think it's going to be a lot about the environment. I do think that it's going to be a lot about the injustices that we've experienced. I think with Charleston, as Vanity put it, being a portal, I'm going to put a caveat there. Please, everybody, think Google The South is a Portal by Sarah Days. Yes. That was a foundational text for me to think about the futuristic perspective of this story and understanding who I am and who we be. But yeah, when I think about Charleston, I think that a lot of people are going to continue to return to this place. I think a lot of people are going to continue to return to the Low Country and the Gullah Geechee corridor, because there are stories that haven't been told over several generations and centuries that need to be dug up and told. And even if they're not told, they need to be dug up and just experienced by someone to help them know themselves better, to help them know their communities better, to help them know themselves before themselves better. When I think about Gullah Geechee cinema, I think about how we need to give camcorders to young Black Gullah Geechee kids, or that's kind of duplicative, young Gullah Geechee people, Gullah Geechee kids. My little cousin Asaya, I just be giving him the camcorder, just like, yo, run around. My auntie be getting mad that he be running around with the camcorder. She be trying to tell him to sit down, and she's back there. She put her head down. But I be giving it to him because I've come to realize arts, specifically film and photography, things that we can see. You can see words, but just visually seeing it, it is such a powerful tool and weapon to resist the narrative that we've been taught about ourselves. And I think we've been taught a lot about ourselves, especially, I wouldn't even say especially in South Carolina. This entire world, we've been taught about ourselves as Black people that we're less than, or we're disconnected, right? Like, I think being back home, going back to a previous question, being back home has taught me how connected this country, but specifically this corridor in Charleston is to the Caribbean, is to West Africa, is just to the world. And I think Gullah Geechee cinema is really going to be under this umbrella of African cinema, right? Because you can, I think as I was studying other films, I was studying West African filmmakers. Yes. Right? Like a lot of the slower shots and long holds that you saw, those were all intentional. Yes, we had a budget, but we had a budget. We had some money, but it was all intentional because I wanted us to breathe through the shots. And one thing that I observed with West African cinema, documentary and narrative, is that we sat there for moments that were probably a little bit more uncomfortable than like your typical Hollywood film. But we sat there and we were able to take a breath to breathe into the scene. We were able to immerse ourselves in these characters. So I guess last thing, just to kind of summarize, I really believe that Gullah Geechee Cinema is going to be the portal. It's going to be the connection. It's going to be the portal to this wider range of African diasporic filmmaking, with hopes of us being connected and seeing those connections visually and hearing it, so that we can be collectively like holding that power that Benny mentioned. Yeah.
I remember before we shot this film, I told Taquan that this film is going to be important, not only, as a film, like the final product, but the process of doing it, and that this would start like a movement of young people and filmmakers who maybe never made a film, maybe they're interested in it, maybe they're writers, maybe they're photographers, maybe they just want to work on set. But this was really a space for a lot of growth for our community, and I think that this film started a movement because shortly after that, you have people now collaborating on more films and more films and more films. But I would argue it was all started through High Water. So to answer the question about 2050 or in 25 years, I think we're going to see more films. I think we're going to see films that are going to tackle really big, epic questions that Charleston and South Carolina is the centerpiece to. Really the founding of this so-called nation, Charleston is a centerpiece before it was even a nation. You go back to 1526 when the first Africans were brought, not 1619, 1526 in South Carolina by the Spanish. From they came here, and within a few years, I don't even know if it was a few years, very soon they rebelled. And those Spanish colonizers, they went back to Haiti, which was Spanish at the time. And those Africans ran into away with the Native Americans. And that happened in South Carolina. But, we don't learn about that. You take it to the Civil War. Those soldiers, those black soldiers that freed themselves, we learn about Lincoln. Lincoln freed the slaves. No, he didn't. It took a lot of hundreds of thousands of formerly enslaved people who picked up a gun against their former masters. And they came back to the heart of slavery, which was the Low Country, because of rice, because of cotton, because of indigo. And they liberated themselves and their family and their kin. Learned about the Combahee River raid with Harriet Tubman came down here, liberated over 700 people along the Combahee River. So it's people are going to start to look to Charleston in order to look to us in order to make things so that we can correct the historical narrative.
Yes.
We're talking about the future, but I think, we really got to go back and correct some things so that we can get into the future and we can have the correct analysis to move forward and make the type of, art, whether it's literature, whether it's film, whether it's photography, whether it's, music, whatever it is that resonates and that's authentic and true. So.
Flowers.
So with that, my questions are done. I'm going to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, raise your hand and I can skip to you. Oh, hey.
Happy Juneteenth, everybody,
Happy Juneteenth.
and a good evening. My name is Ken Macon. I'm a writer for ESPN and the Christian Science Monitor. Found out about this event online. So glad I came down. So two-part question, a question for Ty, a question for the group. Oh, let me also say this too. The Gullah Geechee connection. So a couple years ago, I got a chance to hang out with a wonderful young lady named Josephine Wright. If you're not familiar, some developers tried to take her land.
Oh,
So,
yes, I
yeah.
remember. Yeah.
And Tyler Perry, Kyrie Irving ended up helping her out, but sat in her living room for 2-3 hours, and that was just one of really beyond the joy of like my professional career. It was just something that's just like soulful and something that I just needed. It's like as a person, you know what I mean? But at any rate. So a question for Ty and a question for the group, centering around Afrofuturism, because this piece is being presented in 2040. And so when I think about Afrofuturism, I think about Black Panther and, you know, like going to space, and understandably so. But I just want to kind of get your idea of and your interpretation of what Afrofuturism is and how you were able to convey this message in a way that was so tangible.
Yeah, so when I think about Afrofuturism, I think when I was introduced to it, like you mentioned, right, it is Black Panther in space, you know, just very far out there. But I think when I think about Octavia Butler, who last minute, honestly, I think I hit like the cast up and was like, hey y'all, like 2 days before, I was like, hey y'all, we're actually gonna set it in 2040. So like do what you need to do with your mind and just make it work. For context, Octavia Butler has a book called The Parable of the Sower. She has a trilogy, well, incomplete trilogy, that actually starts in the year of 2024. And she talks about a government that's very similar to the government that we're living in now. She talks about a lot of climate catastrophes that are very similar to the climate catastrophes that we're living in now. So I wouldn't necessarily call her a prophet. Maybe people would, maybe others wouldn't. But I would call her someone that just was very aware of the times and very aware of where we were headed. In the context of this film, I think something that stands out, I believe Angela Davis said it and James Baldwin said it. I'm sure a lot of other people have said it in different ways and shapes and forms. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think with a city like Charleston, I'll say this too, my concept of time is very different. Yes, past and future and present, but like it really is just one long continuum thing. So for me, Charleston just hasn't changed. In the next, it takes place in 2040, so do the math real quick. 15 years, I believe that this city will be the exact same city beast that it's always been. Yes, we have more like newer technology. The demographics have changed. People are being pushed away, but like the city has always been the same. So I say all that to say that writing this, even though it's in the near future, it just felt like I was writing it in the here and now. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and I did have a question for the cast. Just Afrofuturism and the relationship with water, because water means different things to different people, spirituality, lifeline. So I really just wanted to ask the cast, like what's your relationship with water? Like, what does it mean to you? Like, maybe culturally, maybe spiritually. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Oh, for me, water is a part of all of us, and we are connected to the water, the air, the land. Everything is connected, but we was taught to disconnect stuff. So I have a very, very, I could say that it's a kinship with water, because we have a saying, say the water bring us and the water take us. So that's rooted in it's rooted in the culture that I came from, to respect the water. You don't build by the water if you on lowland. You don't do that. That's just the things that we do. I work closely with the Gullah Geechee Nation, Queen Quet, so I've been working and doing a lot of things with water. Before we open our ceremonies, we do water, we do libation, because I believe that we have to honor those ancestors whose shoulders we stand on. I hope I answered your question.
Beyond measure.
Mr. Ernest, I'm coming to you.
I think, yes, respect. My sign is the water bearer. I am an Aquarius, even though that is an air sign. I think I have felt connected to water and bodies of water in a few profound ways throughout my life. But I think the most profound way is grappling with the strength of water at its height, especially being raised in the city. the strength of a hurricane that we experience as a coastal city is almost like none other. Being one of a few port cities in this country, we've had a lot of economics that have been driven by way of the water, by way of a port, by way of a marina. And at that same time, we have also experienced the strongest of storm surges come by that very same water. I used to think that maybe the hurricanes were a curse being sent to us as a result of the North Atlantic slave trade. And I still do think that. I think that hurricanes follow the same path of the winds that carried us over here. And I think they are an embodiment to never forget the torrential waters we had to cross to even make life here possible. The peace that water brings, but also the strength that it possesses, is something to be respected.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. I think. Mr. Ernest, you got it?
How under the do?
Under the do
Never
again.
mind.
I want to say this is a privilege to be here with this camp today. You guys are an extension of where we come from. I venture to say, when you say that, I've heard numbers as high as 50 to 80%. I've heard numbers as low as 45% of the West Africans that came here from Africa came to Charleston. Well, hell, if that number is that high, I venture to say all us come from Africa to Charleston.
Just
So we are very rooted in the culture here. This is where the creativity is. I go back to filmmaking 40 years, guys.
Yes, yes.
So I stand on the shoulders of the Oscar Michaud, the Garden Park, Julie Dash. I stand on the shoulders of Spike Lee. I stand on the shoulders of Bob Burke and all those guys I've met. And you know what? The bottom line is you guys, was my job to pass this on to you guys
Right.
to the next level of play. It's my job. That's what I do. I'm giving it to y'all. So y'all can take it from where the descendants, the fathers of it, give it to you guys and I pass it on to you guys. You are the future. I'm talking about Afrocentric. We are now telling our old stories, and Charleston is now the hotbed of filmmaking. From you guys. The generation that you guys, we give it to you, so take it and run with it. It's yours to do it. The Spike Lees I work with, the Oscar Michaud, the Julie Dash, the Seeking, the film, the International African American Museum. You know, the Sidney Poitiers, the Aaron Spellings. When I ran into these guys, the Denzel Washington, I did his first film. The Woman Rudolph story. He was a young kid like I was. The name of the game was to pass it on to the next guy. I would do anything y'all need me to do.
It's true.
From one to get the doggone trash can to acting in front of the film. Whatever you need, it's my job to pass on to you guys.
Exactly.
I am so proud of what you guys are doing in the relative
Yes, we are.
I want to thank y'all. I want to thank you. I want to thank Britt. I want to thank Elder Time. You know how many you go.
Yeah.
You and everything else. We do it all.
Yes, yes, yes. We do what we got to do.
Being a part of it, allowing me to do what I have to do in order to pass it on to the future. So y'all can tell your stories, and y'all churn to tell y'all churn stories.
That's right.
That's right.
You better know what I have to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. We appreciate you, Mr. Ernest, so much. And with that being said, we are at the end. Taekwon, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I can't get thank y'all so much for coming. There's so many other stories to be told under the umbrella of High Water. As we mentioned, in the Gullah Geechee, excited for everybody to experience everybody's journey that's a part of this cast and this crew. I want to mention, because I'm trying to make some money back from what I put in the film.
All right.
I made a book out of the scripts. I am selling it for $15. Cast and crew, I'm gonna like revise it, but if you want yours today, I got you. But y'all don't gotta pay. But people that are not cast and crew, $15. I'll be selling it at the doors. And again, just thank y'all so much. Please.
And before we officially wrap, we do have to get out of here because the next show is showing. But our producer just so happened to be born on Juneteenth. And she knew we weren't going to let her out the building without doing something for her. So if you guys could please give a round of applause for Shaquille, our producer. Yeah, bring your bucket here and get your flowers.
Shaquille does it all.
I'd say she's trying. Yeah, walk. Thank you. Yes, walk.
Not just a producer, a first AD, she does it all.
Thank you. Put some respect on my girl. All right, you guys, that is a wrap on the High Water premiere. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Please get home safely. I think we're going to do shenanigans, so happy Juneteenth.